right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another segment of Dear Heretics, our favorite advice column, Nolan. These were really good. So, first of all, thank you all for sending these in. They are unedited, pretty much. They're really difficult situations, and we really appreciate them. So, again, please keep these coming to us. We look forward to them every week. We do have a backlog. We're going to start here, Nolan. Kind of two parts to this question related. And here we go. Dear Heretics, I ran into a bit of a sensitive situation. We are in rapid growth mode, which is amazing. Our current CFO has a long-standing relationship with our CEO and a voting interest in the company. It's become apparent, however, that the CFO is an excellent accountant and controller, but is not able to provide the strategic support needed in FP&A and longer-term strategy, vision, and investor relations. The idea the CEO and I discussed was layering them under a new CFO and giving the current CFO a reduced scope role. This is obviously sticky and delicate and makes recruiting a bit less straightforward than usual, as it's still confidential while they search. Do we want to possibly bring them into the deciding process of who to hire for this job? How do we handle it? Okay, related to that, another layering question that's connected, Nolan. Because I've seen it happen again in startups, how should we approach leveling over? What do I do if I'm a new leader layered in over someone who is not happy about being layered over and felt that they should have gotten my job? What advice do you give to someone who has been layered over, and advice to me where I came in over that person who is not happy?
Yeah.
Right?
All right. So I think with layering is a very delicate situation. And I will tell you that at DoorDash, I essentially lived in fear every day of getting layered. And here's I think the ultimate thing. No human is perfect at all of the things. Period, full stop. And so I always say life is about trade-offs. And so the person that you currently have who is solving the problem today, usually generally pretty well, otherwise you'd fire them, has some deficiencies. And so the first question for me is it possible for the person to grow in the areas in which they are deficient? And I think oftentimes that just gets skipped over. Like we just stop being human when we talk about like layering stuff in organizations. I think a big reason why is because we end up like, they're just so ingrained in the org. They're just around all the time that it's like, oh, it's like them. And we should just take a step back and be a little bit more thoughtful and strategic about how we interact with them. So first things first is like, can we grow them? And if the answer is yes or maybe, then I think it needs to be how. And this is where a great chief people officer, this should be their job. Like if I'm the CEO, I should be being like, look, I love Kelly. She's awesome. This area over here is like not working super great right now. Can you help me figure out a way to grow her? And this is where you can get coaches, where you can get advisors, where you can loop in board members, like people to help Kelly grow, to see if she can actually do it and give her the shot. Because on the other side is, recruiting as a recruiter by trade. For whatever reason, for recruiting, we always think like, oh my God, like new candidate's going to solve all of our problems. And here's the reality is new candidate has no fucking context on the organization. They have none of the established relationships built in order to get shit done inside of said organization. They're going to like not know anything for maybe the first like 90 days. They may like actually come in and steer the ship the wrong direction initially. They might be a bad hire. There's so many things where it can go wrong. So my bias and my personal belief and experience is that you should always try to make it work with the person first before considering layering. And then I'll add to it, but I want to get your take first.
Yeah, I think, and I've seen it in my career where we get all caught up, to your point, in the non-human aspect. Oh, well, we're 200 million now, or we're at this phase and we need someone who's seen it and done that. And sometimes that is the right answer, actually, but I have seen everyone jump to that because that's what everyone else does, and the company pedigree and the this and that. So I think your point about, is this really necessary? before jumping into that is important, because it does get skipped over more often than you think, because that's just the way of the world. That's what you do. It's best practice, one of our favorite terms, and it's not. So, and I like your point, and I think it's been underutilized about coaches, kind of coaches, but we've talked about this concept of these functional guides, right?
Yes.
These Sherpas, and I'm doing it now for, a handful of folks, where it's not the exec coaches in the suits that are doing nothing but 360s on you all day long. It's actually operators that have seen success and failures and scars and trauma and all the things to help young leaders, right, early career leaders, accelerate their development faster through having these guides. And I never really had one when I was in the role,
Yeah.
and I still don't think they're very common. I think it's growing, but I think it's incredible what that can do for the development and the acceleration of that person being able to do that job. That's
But like
interesting.
the thing with the operator, right, Kelly, is like they have exact experience with the industry, the role, and the context of the problem. Like that's where it works. Where it doesn't work is like, oh, I'm friends with this exec, right? It just like makes no sense. Like you have to have the context on, like, it must be a tech company that is at this stage in size, that this person's been in this role before, and they've solved the types of problems that we're solving. That's where the magic is. And by the way, that person can also then help guide the CEO from a third party perspective and say, hey, I actually think like you guys haven't given this person a real shot, or say, I actually think you're right. Like it's time to layer. And they could provide a really valuable outside perspective. So let's go back to the first question, which is around this CFO potential layering situation.
Mm-hmm.
And what's actually happening here that our listener has not stated is that they are running a confidential search to layer the current CFO, and the current CFO has no idea what's going on.
Yes.
That's fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, that's super fucked up. That's not cool. How I always say, like, how would you feel if we were doing this to you? And you'd feel like there was something subversive going on in the relationship between you and the CEO and you and the chief people officer who is allowing this to happen. So, like, put things on the table. Let people know where you're at. Let them know you're talking to other CFOs so you can understand, just like are my expectations misaligned? Or maybe we should. And tell people, when you tell people early, it is often reciprocated in kind that, okay, great. Like, yeah, this is a deficiency for me. And maybe they start to admit things that they otherwise wouldn't have admitted because you're putting it on the table for them. So I just think it's like, one, I think it's bad for business, because now if you do hire somebody, it's going to be like, surprise, you have a new boss. And oh, by the way, like this is your new role. Who's going to love that environment? Is that new CFO going to be set up for success? Oh, by the way, if you hire that new CFO under that guy's, like, aren't they always going to have that in the back of their head? Aren't all the other execs going to have that in the back of their head, that this is how you did somebody really, really dirty? And then just in general of like, how do you expect that person to be able to eat that and to stay and say, oh, like, okay, great, I'm just going to keep doing my best work here now that you have completely lied to me about our relationship.
Yeah, and it compromises the quality of the search too. I mean, doing something in secret and kind of moving around, you're not able to kind of fully get out there and leverage the skill sets of this really talented CFO to be a part of it. Now let's talk about why that is, and we've talked about this multiple times this year, Nolan. It comes down to trust, right? I mean, we've talked about it when if I'm an executive and you're the CEO, I don't tell you I plan on leaving until, I have another job or whatnot. Why? Because you're going to kick me out of my ass. And I would go so far to say, is this the reverse to this caller? Are you afraid this person will object and leave you high and dry? And again, I think that the bottom line here is how you treat someone, how you respect them, how you trust them, and thank them for the contributions to the company. Hey everyone, we'll be right back in a moment after a word from our sponsors.
I must admit, I used to believe that AI didn't actually exist in recruiting or HR. That is until my friend Heather Doche, who leads talent at Signalfire, told me to check out Metaview. I got into the product and was like, wow, AI actually does exist in recruiting, and this product is sick. Metaview is the world's #1 AI scribe built specifically for recruiting. Their AI records and transcribes hiring conversations, like intakes, interviews, and debriefs, then provides perfectly summarized notes of everything that was discussed. I've seen firsthand how tough it can be to extract consistently high-quality data from candidate conversations. I've been in debriefs where interviewers told us about their feelings instead of what actually happened in the interview. And I've seen VPs and CEOs block hires because they didn't learn anything from skeleton scorecards. Metaview changes everything. With perfect notes from every conversation, your people can focus on creating a human connection with candidates, and they can save time on the busy work of cleaning up notes after every interview. But it's so much more than just a time saver, because perfect notes means perfect data. For every candidate and every pipeline, hiring teams can make confident, informed decisions, and talent leaders can finally take control of the interview process. Metaview covers all your compliance needs, works with all your existing tools, and takes less than 3 minutes to set up. Join talent leaders at organizations like Brex, Deal, HelloFresh, and Quora, and check out Metaview. Head over to metaview.ai/heretics to talk to one of Metaview's product experts. Tell them that me and Kelly sent you. Or you could just go to their website and get started for free. You'll be up, running, and AI-enabled in minutes.
Okay, so let's go back to the layering. So, and if I'm the CEO, if I'm the chief people officer, or to the second question, if I'm the new executive coming in over someone, like how do you handle that? And that's one thing that I've done so many times in my career, over the past.
You are the queen at this, actually. You've done this a lot.
Well, I mean, I was really bad at it early on because I was like, what the hell is going on here? But I realized in 15 years in venture, and if this helps folks, I've had these conversations in all three of those roles, right? The new leader that was layered over someone, the CPO, and then working with the CEO and talking to folks, and like dozens of times. And I will tell you, it doesn't always work. It depends on the maturity and the mindset of the other person. But all you can do is be honest. And for me, at least, if it's helpful, what that looks like is, listen, in these venture companies, if that person can't grow and be coached up, they have not failed. Do you know what I mean? Like at some point, no human can develop at a rate in which it's needed. There are some companies, there are some companies that explode, and that rate of development cannot keep up as what's needed, Nolan, because
I hear it, Kelly, but founders can. Founders are the exception to this rule. I just don't buy it.
That's not true. Founders can't. There's tons of founders that don't make it. What are you talking about?
When people say that, it's typically coming from a founder who is also in over their skis.
Oh,
and so that's what I'm saying.
Yes, that is called unfairness, like the pot calling the kettle black, like whatever.
Hypocrisy.
That is
yes,
a bad thing. But in some cases, it's like, listen, you are an ass kicker. You literally took this company from 0 to 1 in an inordinate amount of time, very quickly.
Yeah.
You have quadrupled your mandate of this job in 18 months. Like that is something to be celebrated and very rare. So this person's coming in here that's done a job that's 8x what has quadrupled for you. Your role still has quadrupled, and you're probably going to bring it to 6x of what it was, and you're going to get promotions, and you're going to have room, and you're going to get all these things. So all I'm saying is if the situation is right for it, Nolan, and I agree, there are all these cases and all these combinations. What's worked for me in all these situations is to show people and try to get them to see that their world is not shrinking with these changes. The world around them has just expanded so fast and it's so big that their role is actually still expanding. And I've been there. When you're on the receiving end, all you think about is they're screwing me over. My job's getting smaller. You see red. You can't see that. And that's been helpful for me to explain that to folks.
Yeah.
Sometimes it didn't work and they got pissy, left the company, took a chief people officer job because they were annoyed and then crashed and burned, called me a year and a half later. Fine. That's okay. You got to learn. But that's been helpful for me and for people.
So the only other thing I would add to that is so Henry said this at Carta, and I'd never heard anybody say it. And it is, I think about it all the time now when I interact with early employees, is it's really easy for the new executive to forget everything it took to get to that point. And I honestly think we should be celebrating early employees a lot more than we currently do in venture.
Yeah. And my simple thing on that is don't be a suit. Like, don't be an idiot. Like, you know what I mean?
But it's so easy. Like, this is the fail state for a new executive coming in, is like, well, God, look at all this shit that's fucked up. It's so easy to come in and be like, that's why they hired me, versus like understanding that there are many things broken. There will continue to be many things broken, but that look at how well the company's doing right now. And it's only doing this well because this person helped us get here.
Yes.
And I think if you could just reframe into that mode, if you can publicly celebrate the person, if you could just do like those, it's like this sort of like human, like maneuvering to make them still feel like, God, thank God you've been here. Thank God you continue to be here. Make them feel wanted. Because that's what also happens during layering stuff, is like typically the CEO doesn't do a good job of making sure that that person still feels like they're important in the organization. And so I think you can do those things. And then that sets you up for major success inside the company, because then once you're there and you're doing those things, they're more likely to want to help you, which you need. And then your job is to add value to that person's life by removing barriers, by helping them grow, by just being like the shepherd that they didn't have. Yeah. And so I think that's my take on it for the new executive. I think from the employee who's getting layered standpoint, which is the other, part 2 of question 1A, is I honestly think like taking some time and like take a breather, because it does you get so attached to these roles. These roles become part of your identity. And what ends up happening is when the layering conversation happens, all of a sudden you feel like part of your identity has been stripped away from you. Mm-hmm. And it has. Like, you've lived it. You've bled. You've cried. You've lived through like these hard moments of building a company. And now all of a sudden somebody's coming in to be your boss that has no context, that hasn't been there, that hasn't lived it. And all I could tell you is try and think of the future version of yourself. And you have 2 paths. One path is you're spiteful. The other path is you're gracious to the new person coming in. And I think the future version of yourself will be very thankful if you're gracious of the new person coming in.
Yeah. And I'll add to that. I think a key ingredient to help you be gracious is to spend time outside of your company and make sure you're using some time to get perspective, to meet other people.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm just speaking for myself. Like, when I am so in it and that's all you do, that's all you see, that's all you can see. I mean, you're just gripping so tight that you can't see anything else. And, building the networks, getting to know how other companies are doing this, talking to other people, like you're going to be more balanced and healthy, I think, to be able to see that in a different way, to question 1A. So funny.
Yeah.
1A. Have you seen Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield? And that I have one question with 27 parts.
No, definitely not.
10 years older here, folks. Back to School. Great film.
Yeah.
I just think the external perspective is so helpful in so many ways.
It is.
Sometimes we're not even aware it's helping. It's literally subconscious in our energy.
Yeah, you have no idea actually how many people that either you're close with or that you admire have been exactly in your shoes. Yeah. It's almost like a rite of passage, in fact. Like, this is like one of those like really hard lessons to learn on the journey is, man, you feel like you've been doing everything. You've been like committed 1,000%. And that's also like part of the devil, right? Kelly, is like, you're so in it that it is your identity. And now they're like, oh, by the way, like you have a new boss. You're like, what the fuck is this? Like I've been living it the way you told me to.
It's because you built something of value that is now
exactly
bigger than you. Like getting layered means you have been successful. If you are not getting layered, you might be getting laid off because you have not been successful in building something bigger than yourself.
And what Kelli is saying sounds trite in the moment. Like it does. Like hearing you say
it sounds trite.
But like, you know, just the emotional of that person of like, oh, great. Like, yeah, I've built this thing that's so successful. Next time I'm going to hold on to my chips. So like, you know, it's not, you know, and it's just not, you're exactly right, Kelli. Yeah. It's just hard to hear.
And remember what I said 5 minutes ago, this really depends on the person who's receiving the message. Like, it really depends on their maturity, on their perspective, who they are as an individual. I mean, this isn't like cookie cutter stuff. It lands with everyone differently. There's a complicated factors on that. These are great questions. This is great.
Yeah, this was a great topic. Keep sending these in, guys. These are really good.
All right.
HR Heretics is a podcast from Turpentine, the network behind Econ 102, Moment of Zen, and Turpentine VC. Subscribe, 5 stars, share it on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, all the things.